Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Hello!
Woo! There we are, recording in progress. Happy Muse Day, Dan Kent.
Hello, happy Muse Day.
Yes, he's Dan Kent. I just said that. I'm Shawna Boren, and this is the MuseCast. The MuseCast, yes. Okay, we're going to have to tell the people. I have been on vacation. It was my kids' spring break, blah, blah, blah. So my brain is still kind of getting integrated back into the business side of things. And I know the MuseCast is a very serious situation. And so I promised I'm here. I'm hunkering down, Dan. I'm ready to go. All right. So welcome. Happy Muse Day. We're glad that you're here. And we are going to talk about Sandra Unger's sermon. Thank you. Please forgive me. I love you. Is that
so
even the
nice
right order?
for you to say that. Oh, that's the title. That's the title. Okay, I see. Okay. My mistake.
That is it. Wait, did I say it right? There are three phrases, and I don't know if I got them in order, but they are important phrases. Okay, great. So Sandra she was with us on Sunday and is continuing on in this series for us. And so, you were there though, Dan. You were the host. You did fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And really quickly, before we get into the summary, big shout out to our Woodland Hills community. They just knocked that food drive out of the park, as we knew they would. But that is so impressive. Seriously, that is so impressive. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, well, and I don't really remember what I said on Sunday, but I will say, so if I'm repeating myself, I just think that is such a great ministry and a great service, and we really help a lot of people. And it's hard to even they keep track of how many, but man, when you're there, it's just there's so many people, and everyone's so appreciative, and it's definitely something that is going to continue to be a need because especially there's a lot of uncertainty what's going on in the economy and with the nation, and so that could be a big place where God does a lot of good things here in the near term future. And the team there, you have Paula and Kinsey and Gary.
Oh my gosh,
they do such a good job.
Best. Yeah.
So I'm really glad that we were able to hit that number.
Amen to that. Yeah, they are the best team, and there are the best volunteers that help out every week. Yep. And we get to do that sometimes. And it's just such a blessing to be able to see behind the curtain and to see the families impacted. And so all that to say, thank you. Way to go, you guys. You never cease to amaze me. When we put out a call, and we know that it's going to serve the community, you guys are on it. Blood drives, that's not our strong suit, but a food drive, we are all there. Yep. All right. Dan Kent, do you have a summary for us from Sandra's sermon? And I've already forgotten the title, so I'm going to let you just take it away.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, speaking of the food shelf, though, I will be there tomorrow from 10 to noon, so hope to see people there. Let's see. So thank you. Please forgive me. I love you. That's the title. So Sandra, first of all, I love this title. I for some reason, I like the titles that are longer, that have parts to it, more complicated. There's something about that I like. I mean, something hard hitting, Inner Exodus or something like that, or Christ Abides. There's something good about that too. But there's always a drive toward the shorter, punchy titles, and for good reason. But every once in a while to go the other way is sort of refreshing.
It's impressive. Wait, really quickly, I'm interrupting you. My favorite is the Christ Abides, Inner Exodus. The hand motions that you did just make it all the more special. So thank you for that.
Because they're punchy. That was the...
Oh, okay. That's... I was like, is this a new nugget dance? What are we doing? I love it. It's okay. All right. I'm done interrupting.
Excellent. So that's the title of the sermon, but the topic is about forgiveness as a practice, and I loved her point too. It's like it's a practice because it takes practice. We have to practice doing it, and it's part of our Wholehearted series. So it is about spiritual disciplines and also our 4 directions of love, where we can never just do one simple thing. We have to make it all complicated with different things, and so that's what we're doing. We're doing the 4 directions of love, and also the disciplines and how the disciplines kind of serve and facilitate those directions of love. So her direction of love is our love of others, and she looked at the role of forgiveness in that. And so, first of all, she sort of defines forgiveness, which is kind of when you just mentally let go of a wrong that has been done to you. It's this sort of active thing where you make the choice to let it go. And now that's not saying that what was done to you is okay, because if it was okay, it wouldn't require this act of forgiveness. So it's not that the act is okay. It's just that you're not letting that affect you anymore. You're throwing it out. You're saying it's forgiven. It's also not necessarily reconciliation. And this is a point that we've made many times on this show, that, to forgive doesn't mean that you're reconciled. It doesn't mean you have to live with the person. It doesn't mean you have to hang out with the person. You might not even like the person, but you have just forgiven that thing. And what you're doing is that you are releasing the power that has over you. And I thought Sandra did a bang up job kind of defining that. But she also notes that forgiveness is often a community sort of activity. You need to, if someone wrongs you, you need to go and be with people to support you that haven't wronged you. And so the more relationships you have in your life that you can lean on, the better, I think. And then Sandra just talks about 3 stories that sort of highlight the importance of a forgiveness practice. And the first one is she looks at Jesus's life and just sort of Jesus's constant state of forgiveness, where there is sort of like this chronic grace that's there, and you see Jesus's life, and there's no like petty sort of frustrations that Jesus has with his disciples that are recorded. In fact, there's a couple times when some pretty intense things happen where Jesus is sort of wronged by his own disciples, and the big one, of course, being when Judas betrays Jesus, and sort of they're at the Last Supper, and it all comes out at the table, and talk about a tense meal, but there it was. And like after that, you have the rest of the disciples, and they will all eventually betray him also. They all desert him. They fall asleep, and there's just this incredible tension, and yet Jesus forgives. And that is a great model of that. The second story that Sandra shares is about her brother, Jerry, who has chronic regional pain syndrome. And it's sort of kind of really extreme right now. I don't know if that's the right word, but it has developed and it has spread, and now it is in his heart. And that was just that was a very emotional part of the sermon, and Jerry seems like a really great guy. And I just loved that Jerry's lesson to Sandra revolved around this verse back in Revelation again, where Jesus promises that he is making everything new. And in light of that, in this yearning for wholeness, that yearning for wholeness should also apply to our relationships. And some of that wholeness we have to wait on God, but some of that sits in our laps. God has set before us to bring about that wholeness. And that's where Sandra sort of talks about kind of what she said to her brother. She said, "Thank you and forgive me and I love you." And in particular, with the intentionality and the emphasis on the I, the way that she said is that they own it. They own that love. And it's not just some wishy-washy thing, but it's a very intentional sort of thing. And then the last kind of story that she shares is about a student at the school that she teaches at named Eli, who likes to take apart and put together a toaster. And one of the days that he left the toaster assembled. It was still in pieces. And just the emotional sort of pressure that created, the passion that he had for not leaving that unreconciled, basically. And she uses this as a really great analogy for our own relationships, where we need to fix those up if we can, because it really, that's sort of the goal of wholeness, is to do that. And then she gives these three sort of I don't know if can't remember what she called them. Maybe like helpers or something like that. I should have wrote down what she called these, but they're very wise little things to help us in this kind of mission toward forgiveness and reconciliation. And she says the first one is that Jesus is here, to remember that, which we've talked about in this series a lot. Number two, to practice saying in a meaningful way, to own it, thank you, to have that real gratitude, forgive me, to have that real confession and vulnerability and openness, and I love you. And then number three, she says to have a helpful urgency toward making relationships whole and healthy. And I really like that qualifier, a helpful urgency, because and I really thought about that little thing probably the most since the sermon, mostly because I one of the problems with the disciplines is that they can become a new source of anxiety, and they can become a new source of harassment, and that's not the goal. The goal is peace, the peace of Christ, which transcends all understanding and so forth. So I thought that was a really helpful sort of thing. And then she finishes with a benediction from Colossians 3:12 through 15. And that is my summary. And what did you think of the sermon? You watched it right when you got back from vacation. So you hit the ground running right when you got back.
I did. I hit the ground running, watched Sandra's sermon. So thank you to Sandra for that. I always feel like anytime the topic of forgiveness is discussed, it can be a can of worms. Because as humans in relationship with other humans, there's just a lot of opportunity for the need for forgiveness, and that is very entangled and not always easy. And so I agree that forgiveness is a spiritual practice because it does take practice. And I do like that we took forgiveness as a spiritual practice, as a way to implement some of these spiritual practices in our lives, because it does impact the way we relate to others in so many ways. And so with Sandra showing us that Jesus, as one who walked on the earth and related to humans and was close to people and was betrayed by those people, he had to walk in forgiveness, and we should follow suit. And then her story about her brother Jerry, and just the conversation there, and just saying the things that need to be said while there's time to say them. I think that was awesome. And then the story about Eli was great. And so it was just a really good picture of, in our human relationships, that if we desire wholeness and healthy relationships, forgiveness is going to play a part. Now, Sandra said, Dan just said, I have said, we have said, forgiveness does not mean that it's all good. Forgiveness does not mean that the wrong wasn't major, that you should just get over it. It doesn't mean any of that. For me, when I think of forgiveness and when I've taught on forgiveness, it is something for me that ties back to actually Dan's sermon about love of self. One of the ways in which we walk in love of self is this forgiveness piece, because when we carry unforgiveness, it truly is an anchor. It is a burden. It weighs us down. It can even cause us to be unhealthy physically, certainly emotionally and spiritually. And so a way of loving ourself and being whole is to walk in forgiveness. And I just think that's really, really important. And we can't forgive others until we have learned forgiveness of ourselves. And so I just think it all kind of plays in together. And I'm thankful for the challenge and the reminder of this particular spiritual practice that is not easy. A lot of times we don't want to do it. we feel like it's going to let someone off the hook if we do. And I just think that's not true. And I appreciate anytime we talk about the disciples because it makes me feel a bit better about myself.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, those bozos, blessed bozos, they were like in the literal presence of Jesus, walking where he walked and conversing with him and eating and drinking and doing the things with him. And they loused it up time and time again. And so me being so very far removed from the actual physical walking with Jesus on the daily, it just gives myself, a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, I thought it was good. And I do think forgiveness, like I said, it's a tricky topic. I'm thankful that we talked about it. And I hope that people are prayerfully just considering the impact that this has in their life.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I also really liked the distinction that she sort of makes between like episodic forgiveness and chronic forgiveness, which is not a great way to distinguish them. But there's like when somebody does something to you that's like this salient, sort of bright kind of flash of light kind of thing, or flash of darkness, as it were, and that hurts you. That's like a something that you have to forgive. And that takes, that takes work, and it takes, hopefully it takes conversation and confrontation, and you kind of work through that, hopefully, if you can. But then there's sort of the more chronic sort of forgiveness where you just live with grace toward others, and you just allow people that flexibility to kind of be who they are and do what they do, and let them be different than you, and let them be human, and just having that kind of persistent grace toward one another, I think is also really important. And definitely some people have a narrower range of grace toward others than some other people do. And that's a place where if you find yourself really frustrated with other people, maybe that's a place where you can sort of expand that sort of persistent, ongoing, that lifestyle of grace. And I think that's really a good distinction to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up, Dan, because I feel like that was kind of the example that we were looking at about Jesus. Like he just was in a continual state of grace toward his friends, the disciples that, did mess it up time and again. But his love for them allowed him to walk in this graciousness toward them. And that was a continual thing. And so I think it is a way in which we can be stretched. Now, when we say walk in grace towards others, we're not saying get, knocked around and beat up and be a doormat and all of that. Like I need people to understand that's never what we're saying. Right. Boundaries are good and healthy and actually loving. Like you can forgive and you can walk with grace, but boundaries are good and healthy and actually a way of loving others and yourself. So that's my little soapbox thing. But I have a question for you, Dan.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know if you're going to like this question, but we're going to give it a shot. When you think of forgiveness as a spiritual practice, as something that, without anxiety, because we don't want that, but with a proper sense of urgency, like what does that look like for folks? Like how do you practice forgiveness? Like, do you just look for opportunities that you've been wronged and then I forgive? Practically, what does that look like to practice forgiveness?
Well, that's a good question. This is just sort of an off-the-cuff answer, but I think every time that you feel irritated with others is definitely a place where you can practice that more chronic kind of forgiveness. And, like one of the things that I found, like I used to get really frustrated, driving. And I wouldn't say that it was road rage, but it was, I would get frustrated with driving. And partly because I used to have, for some reason, my right foot is a little heavy. And so sometimes my vehicle would go faster than other vehicles on the road. And sometimes I got frustrated and so like for me, something that was really helpful is just when people are driving in a way that I think is idiotic or foolish, and I just feel that kind of like frustration with them, I started saying, we're all in this together. We all have to use the same road, and so we all have to kind of make this work together. And just like stuff like that, where I talk myself down from the frustration, and and so it's basically like a much less, infinitely less severe version of "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." But it's also like a communal aspect. Like we're sharing a road. This is a complicated piece of civilization that's going on here. We have like these vehicles that are capable of killing each other, and they're a half ton. 2-ton vehicles that can go 120 miles per hour, and we're all trying to get to different places in this little square of land, this little geographical spot, and we have these little paths that we have to go on, and all of these cars have to use these same paths. It's very complicated. And so, of course people are gonna do things differently and get in the way and stuff like that, and that's a way of me sort of talking myself down from my frustrations with what people are doing. And so that's a place where I practice forgiveness. But again, that's different than an episodic sort of thing where somebody does
Correct.
something specifically blatant to me. It's the difference between, like Sandra was talking about, how I don't like the way that Peter chews with his mouth open, but Peter's not doing that to Jesus. Judas did something to Jesus. That's a very different thing. And that fortunately, which is a weird thing to say, but fortunately, we will all be betrayed, and we will all be hurt, and we will have opportunities to practice that, and we probably won't get it right. But the more we get it right, the closer to whole I think we become.
Amen. I love your response because I feel like it was a very tangible and practical example for people. And I feel like it goes perfectly in line with stuff we've said before on the show. If we can't, like you said, that's low level, just kind of getting in that mindset of de-escalating some of our frustrations that happen as we interact in the world. If we can't do that, it's going to make it much harder to get to the place of truly forgiving when those big episodic things happen.
Right,
and
that's
so
right.
I think that's where the practice comes in. And that's what I'm getting at. I think that this is about a mindset and a heart posture that we're going to need help with because it's not easy. But if we're not engaging in this mindset and heart posture during the day, with just the more mundane, minute opportunities, then when those big things come, it's going to be much harder.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of what I'm working through in my brain. It's not perfectly, worked out, but I think it has merit.
Well, why don't you get it all perfectly worked out? I'll wait here. So just let me know when you get it, and then we'll
All right,
we'll
let
move
me
forward.
see. So you do it. Okay, I got
Carry
it.
the one, carry the one, and
Worked it out. Yeah, I think it has to be something that we're mindful of, that we're thinking about, because so much of our natural reactions are going to be to protect, to preserve, to rail at the injustice of it all, and I'm not saying any of that is bad. I'm just saying it's going to take a bit of an intentionality to truly walk this out as we interact with the folks in our life and the people that we don't know and the people that we share the planet with, and all of that. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, well, I will say this: everything that's happening in the world right now, all of the war, is the result of a failure of forgiveness, and more than just a failure of forgiveness, the accumulation of failures of forgiveness, and that's at least part of it. It's not the whole thing, but that's at least part of it. Like what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Ukraine, all of that is just there's no grace toward one another, and there's no understanding toward one another, and And that's the result. That's the path. And we might not get to perfect forgiveness, but at least we know that that is the right path, and we see
Yeah.
where the wrong path leads, and it's not good.
Yeah, that is such a good point. Thank you for that. And I will say, to bring it more to a personal level, this is something that, gosh, I certainly hope everyone has someone that they can process with, and that they can, because like we've said, it's not always going to be easy. And especially if the offense was especially egregious, like, you may need help. You may need a prayer partner. You may need therapy. You may need, I don't know what, but hopefully you're not just processing and dealing with this alone, because enacting forgiveness is something that it is vital. It's important, but it's also difficult. It's so necessary, but sometimes to get to the good stuff, we've got to go through the hard stuff. And so, yeah, I just really want to encourage folks to, if this is something that you struggle with, and for a variety of reasons, like, hopefully there are people that you can reach out to help you process that. And I will say, my last thing about that is that I am so thankful for the people in my life that bring it up to me. Like, maybe I don't realize I'm harboring unforgiveness. Maybe I don't realize I'm harboring bitterness, or I'm not being gracious, or because I'm just so in it. And there have been people in my life that have said, "Hey, Shawna, I'm noticing this. Is there something that we need to deal with here or talk about? Or is there something that you've not, processed or let go of, or whatever?" And it's just been so helpful. And it is a way to become more whole. And it is a way to become a better reflector of Jesus and his love and life. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Awesome. Do you have any other, besides Nugget, do you have anything else about this topic that you want to share, Dan, or shall we get to the business of putting a bow on the conversation?
I
with
think
our
we need
nuggets?
to put a bow on this one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that means get the camera ready.
It's ready.
It is
Nugget time.
Nugget time. Nugget time. Oh, goodness. Good stuff. All right. As always, Dan, I'm going to give you the choice to nugget first or nugget last.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah, my nugget is just well, it's the passage in Matthew 18. I don't know exact verse. I think it's like 20 to 23, somewhere around there, where Peter is very proud of his maybe great growth in his forgiveness, and so he brings it up in conversation with Jesus. He says, "Hey, Jesus, Messiah, King of God's throne, and all of that. How many times should a person forgive? Is it 7 times?" And he's very proud that, like, oh, that's 7. That's a big number. And Jesus responds by saying that no, you should forgive 7 times 70, which is sort of this countless number. You should always be forgiving. And I think this posture of forgiveness, I think this kind of relates to this lifestyle of grace, where you don't let the things that people do in their lives have power over you, where you just live with that freedom and that clarity, and which is, like you said, not to say that you can just get walked on, but you still, even if you push back and even if you confront and all of that, there still needs to be a forgiveness there. And I think that lifestyle of grace, that lifestyle of just allowing people to live with you as the humans that they are, that posture, the way that you said it, I think is exactly right. It prepares us for the more extreme situations where we need to then find a way to forgive people for more serious, intentional, personal things that they do to hurt us. And so I just think that that's such an important teaching. And the way I've thought of it is, it's like, when you're driving in the rain, you just having that windshield wiper on, where you're just pushing away all that stuff, and you're just, because you have a destination that you're going to. And it's so easy to let the frustrations and the minor things that people do in our lives keep us from getting to where we want to go. And you have to be able to forgive and have grace for that stuff, just so you can get to your destination. And I do agree that it prepares us for the bigger things also. So that is my nugget. It's not really a tactic, but I think it's a good reminder from Jesus.
Amen. Good nugget, Dan. My nugget is going to be one of those gut check type things. More specifically, we talk on the show quite a bit, and I believe you're the one who kind of brought this up initially, but it's like an indicator light on the dash. You just talked about being in the car and the windshield wipers, the indicator light. Like I want us all to take some time in the next week or whatever to sit before the Lord in honesty, and let's check our indicator lights, and let's just have a gut check, and just ask the Lord to show you, because you may not know, or you may know, and then you can deal with that. But just to ask the Lord to show you, is there any area or any person or situation in your life where you are harboring unforgiveness, where you are harboring hurt or pain, and ask the Lord to help you deal with that. If you're not ready to fully deal, ask the Lord to help you get to the next step of being able to deal with that. And that could be toward another person. Like I said, it could be about a situation or whatever. It could be something that you need to forgive yourself for. I don't know. I just know that this spiritual practice is something that we're going to have to, like I said earlier, intentionally take the time to reflect on and pray about, and just see where we need to walk in this forgiveness and this grace. So I encourage us all just to take some time over the next few days to do that, and to ask the Lord and to thank Him for the many ways that we have experienced forgiveness. And then, is there other areas in our life where we need to show forgiveness or express forgiveness, to say it, and to experience just more of that wholeness that we are all after.
Yeah.
That's my nugget.
Awesome.
All right. Yay. Dan, Kent, we have such an incredible community of folks, and they love to engage with us, and they love to send in questions and comments. That's and, right. All the things. If someone wants to do that and they don't know how,
yeah.
How do they?
That's a really good question. And here's the answer. John, or maybe Sarah, is going to put the email right here. And right. That is where it'll be. And you can email your questions, thoughts, comments, cries of heresy to that email address.
Yes, love it. Thank you for that. MuseCast@whchurch.org. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sending in the things that you send in. We appreciate it. And thank you for chatting with us. We always appreciate that. 4 p.m. Central Time on the YouTube. We look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, have a great week. And let's just continue to grow in Christ likeness together by embracing these spiritual practices. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much.